Hi, everybody. Celia Waterhouse here. Thank you so much for joining us here at OnPoint Mentors. Today, we have one of our mentors, Teresa Syms. Now, Teresa is a professional coach who uses the law of attraction, neuro-linguistic programming practices, and cognitive behavioral therapy for depression to help her clients. Welcome, Teresa.
Thanks, Celia. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It always is a pleasure to sit and chat with you. We always have such a good time. Sometimes I should just press record when you first get on, and people can kind of have a laugh with us and
it's been entertaining, hasn't it?
and do our breathing exercises before we get on camera, right?
Exactly. Well, it's important to do that. Especially if you're feeling any kinds of stress, you know.
It is. We have all the fires going around in Colorado, so like my whole window is just a fog. So hopefully no fire person or fireman, firewoman is going to knock on my door saying it's time to evacuate. But if they do, then you just keep going. The show must go on.
Well, that would be a good reason to have to call it, though. I can say, yeah. I hope and pray it doesn't happen.
Oh, it'll be fine.
For your sakes, not.
It'll be fine. We're prepared. When you're prepared, you're ready for anything.
Awesome.
So, and we're going to be talking today about boundaries, right? The why, the how, and the value. So, why don't we just start with why did you choose this topic, and what got you into coaching?
Well, I think boundaries is something that is missing a lot in today's society. I think we have just lost that ability to set the boundaries that we should have because everyone is so busy and everyone is just, under a lot of stress, and we can't always control the boundaries that we have in place. We get busy, we get under a lot of pressure at work. Boundaries just go out the door sometimes. Your boss will come to you and say, "Oh, I know you're busy. You've got a lot of things on the go, but I really need this done." Or a coworker will do that to you, and you've helped them out in the past, but they're starting to take advantage of you. Well, that is the complete image of a permeable boundary, because that's like a line drawn in the sand. Anybody can come in and anybody can go out, and you just go with the flow, right? So
I like the permeable word, the use of that word permeable. You just picture in and out.
Exactly. And it is exactly like having a line drawn in the sand. And so you see it, but you realize that at any point in time, you can just step over that boundary line. And if the water comes up and washes it away, well, so much for your boundary. It's gone. So I thought, it was quite important because I grew up not having any boundaries, not even knowing what they were, because that word wasn't really even used back then. And, it's because I had a life of no boundaries where I experienced the awfulness of life in many ways as a young girl and as a first married woman as well. The boundaries were always they were water pretty much, because you put them down and they were gone immediately. They'd dry up, and everybody walked in and everybody walked out and walked all over me at the same point in time. And when you're a young child, you have no control over that. But when you grow up, you need to learn the tools and the tips and the tricks to set these boundaries in place for your own well-being, as well as the well-being of the other person that you're dealing with. Right. So I think it's very important, especially for young people nowadays. Right. They need to know how to set those boundaries because they're not infallible. None of us are. We're ever-changing, ever-growing beings, and our boundaries need to grow and adapt to that, but not stay rigid.
So you come across as very confident, and so when you talk about no boundaries as a child, explain what does that mean? A child with no boundaries.
Oh goodness, I grew up in a very, very dysfunctional home. And I've just discovered recently they were not my biological parents. They were my aunt and uncle. So they raised me. And my father was an alcoholic, a violent alcoholic. The mother was not in the best frame of mind. And I think that mental illness was also what drove me, because in my first choice of careers when I was young, I wanted to be a psychiatrist, but it just didn't happen. But the unhealthy boundaries for me then, or not knowing that I had any boundaries, was sexual violence as a child, sexual assault, not only from the father figure, but from my family doctor as well. So those boundaries, that should not have happened. Also, just the violence that went on. I had no choice. I had no say. I had no way of protecting myself. So that's a person that has no boundaries. And if you're not taught what they are and what they can do for you, both positively and negatively, it doesn't give you a good start in life. So, and then I went into my first marriage thinking being the exact same way. Oh, I always said, well, nobody's going to walk all over me anymore because I had taken enough of that. But I didn't know how to set boundaries. So my boundaries were like those lines in the sand, gone whenever someone else felt like intruding. Does that make sense, Celia?
It does, definitely. So how did you overcome, and how did you decide that line in the sand is more rigid now?
Oh, goodness. Well, after my car accident in 2007, I lost my career in human resources because I wasn't physically able to do the office thing anymore. So I went on a not search and destroy, but search and learn mission of how to help myself. And then the first step was to write my story. And that healed me to no point. Like, that was the most incredible thing I'd ever done. And I use that for my clients a lot, is to write. If they can write, if they can't, then we record, just voice. So it's just the physical action of getting it out of your body. But I wanted more, and I needed to take what I had experienced in my life, because I now know I'm not the only one. Gee, I thought I was so special, but no, I'm really not. There are so many people that have lived a life like I did and don't know how to break free of it. And I mean, there are times when I still struggle with things that come up and rear their ugly heads. Mm-hmm. But now I have the tools to be able to work it out a lot better than I would before. So that's one of the reasons, was to help myself. But then I realized, I can help other people. So then the coaching aspect came and repeated itself. I think now I have 3 life coaching certifications.
Oh, wow.
I just can't stop learning.
Right.
And I don't want to stop learning because it's good for me. We were talking earlier about the brain injury from the accident. So learning for me is the best way to keep my brain going.
Right.
But setting boundaries in place, I think, started with coaching. My first set of courses I did was through Brene Brown.
Wow.
And boundaries are really key.
Yeah.
They protect you, but they also show the world that they can't take advantage of you. And that's what the best part of it is.
Right. So you say, write your story. Now, you actually wrote a book. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what is that book called, and what is it about?
It's called A Century of Secrets. It's a true story based on stories that I have lived, or things I have lived with. And it's also based on 4 generations of my family, with me being the 4th. And how lies and secrets, if they're left in a closet to rot, more or less, you can imagine the image when you open that closet door. It's going to be horrible. Well, someone needed to talk about it, and someone needed to break the cycles of abuse and violence and everything that went on in that family. And I found out it's just not me. It's cousins I have from the extended family have experienced the same thing I did. So I wanted to write the story. Number one, I thought, was just to heal my grandmother's soul, who the book was originally supposed to be about. But then I went back to her mother, my grandmother, and I did my father and then me, but now I find out the father is not my father, so I have to rewrite the book. But it's like I say, a century of secrets. It's won 4 international awards from readers' favorites.
Wow.
And I'm so proud of it. And I've also co-authored, I think now 7 other books. So,
wow. All on the same topic of boundaries and how you help clients get through.
yeah. And a lot of it was things that I had gone through. One of them was called Still Beautiful, because the sibling I was raised with is older than I am, and we look totally different. So I grew up being called fat and ugly, and that's what I grew up believing that I was totally fat and ugly. And that took till I started doing the Brene Brown work to be able to get that out of my head.
Right.
And to be able to just do the exercise of looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? I was actually 56 years old before I could look in the mirror and say, you know, you actually have pretty eyes. It's just amazing what we hang on to.
Yeah.
So in that scenario of allowing the sibling to allow those words to permeate my boundaries,
right,
not good. So that created an identity of who I thought I was. But in this book, it was writing the story about, no, we can't allow other people to create images in our heads of who they think we are.
right.
That's their opinion, not
right.
ours.
Right. You know, while we're doing this summit on how to manage emotions in the divisive world, you know, we look at a number of different mentors, and you just said Brene Brown kind of helped you get out of your, you know, the depths of whatever you were going through. It's so important to find someone that you resonate with, that understands your story, and help them move forward.
Yes, exactly. And that's the coaching realm that I am into, is to, yes, we are working on, so most of my clients are business women, between 30 and up, 30 and 50. But when we get into the nitty gritty of the coaching program, we always discover there is one thing that has hung on to them from their childhood. Not always, but I'm seeing it a lot. And once we can actually clear out whatever it is that's kept them stuck, you'd be surprised how that opens up.
Oh yeah, it's like a domino effect, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm just curious, what are some of the one things that people hang on to? Like, what are some of the more common ones?
Well, for me, for example, that thinking I was fat and ugly was totally one of the ones that controlled my life for 50 years. You know, that's way too long. Totally way too long. Another one is a young lady that had been raped when she was young. She's now into sales. It was a career she wanted, but she was in a different career at the time, and she felt she would never measure up to that, holding that sales job, and you know, having the confidence and the self-awareness to be able to just go after it. But when we worked together for a little bit, she went after that job and she got it. And, you know, from that point on, she had proof that she was worthy and she had value. And in keeping those, for her, in the sales role she has, some clients were trying to take advantage of her and bully her. So that raised the stuck part of what had happened to her, the trauma that had happened to her when she was younger. So once we managed to get her into a comfortable spot where she could place that trauma in its rightful place where it belonged, you know, and she had dealt with the everything that had gone through, there was an awakening in her. And after that point in time, the client, she was still working with that one particular client, but there was no more bullying. It was not an issue anymore because she learned how to stand up for herself. She put her boundaries not in the sand, but it was like putting a hula hoop around yourself, for example. That's not something that's completely rigid. There is space. You can wiggle it around. You can allow things in or under or around it. But it's not like the brick wall where everything is just totally rigid and you stay out. Everyone stays out. So when you learn to control things like that, or learn to, like I say, put life events in their place after you've dealt with them effectively, then the sky's the limit.
Okay, so what does that mean, deal with them effectively in your perception?
Well, in some cases, and I've had a couple clients that this was the case, I actually had to refer them on to a therapist.
Right.
Because I'm not prepared to go into the deep nitty gritty. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not like that. But for someone like me, learning to face those situations that I had in my life was the best thing that I could do. Not hiding from them anymore, talking about them, getting help for them, and processing what had gone on. So for me, processing was writing the book. And that's how I got through that part.
Do you think, because you've studied a little bit of the law of attraction, and do you think that events and the same repetitive type of things keep coming into our lives basically to teach us a lesson that, okay, enough is enough. I've pounded you, enough about this topic. You're just going to have to get over it and empower yourself and move on. And the boundaries are set. Don't cross this here.
Yes, I think that's true. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Because you can, the universe or whoever you want to believe it is will come down and allow you to experience something, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. You need to have that experience, either to learn something, and hopefully it's to learn something, or to help yourself to find a way to grow. If you're not listening, you're right. They are going to keep coming back. And that was me to a T for a lot of years. Like, you're not paying attention. You're not listening to what I'm saying. You need to look after yourself. You need to do this work. And I kept saying, no, I have other things to do. I was raising children. I was helping to raise 2 stepsons and, all this kind of stuff. So yes, we must pay attention. And I think these lessons, for me anyway, have been extremely important, and for the clients I've worked with, because you need to have that comparison, I think, in order to find the happy balance.
Right. Yeah. I always think that, it's like, boom, boom, boom. It keeps hitting you in the head saying, come on, hello, are you in there? Wake up, right? Until and the reason why I'm asking is because you talked about bullying. And bullying is exactly that, right? Some disempowered person being constantly bullied by some external person or force or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's going to continue to happen until, boom, you wake up, right?
Yeah, you either continue to allow it, or you wake up to the point where you say, you know what, something has to change here. Right. How do I do it?
Right.
And installing really good boundaries is a good way, great first step, actually, in starting that.
Now, I know you practice assertiveness coaching. What do we all get in a room and be assertive and stand wearing our red cape? And tell me more about your coaching program and how that assertiveness coaching works.
If you want to stand in a red cape, that's your choice. I also got into assertiveness training because I needed, for myself, again, to learn the differences between the types of behavior. So passive, aggressive, and I forget it. Passive, aggressive, and sorry, forgot the third one.
That's okay. Passive, aggressive, and what?
Yeah. Anyway, there are 3. I warned you about my.
Is it rigid? No, rigid. No. What you mentioned?
Aggressive, passive, aggressive, and yes. Oh well, it's not going to come at the moment.
That's okay. That's okay. Later. It'll come later. It'll crawl into our conversation.
Celia, no, I wanted to learn about that aspect because when I was dealing with aggressive behavior when I was young.
Yeah.
A lot of my clients have dealt with aggressive behavior, and you become passive or passive aggressive. And passive aggressive is sliding, you tolerate it, but you put offhanded comments, back to the person. So you would say something like, well, if your husband is supposed to take out the garbage, but he doesn't, you stand there and you say, well, I guess I'll have to take out the garbage. So, well, he does do it in the house here, so that's his job. But that's kind of like the offhanded comments that are totally unnecessary.
Right.
You want to be aggressive, but you can't be aggressive
Right.
because you're too passive.
Right.
So assertive behavior is just standing up and saying what you want to the other individual, what you need from a place of compassion, respect, and love. And just to say it like, do you know what, Celia? I really need you to take the garbage out today.
Okay, Teresa, I'd be happy to do it for you.
Thank you. Rather than saying, gee, well, that was somebody else's job, but I guess I will have to do it now. You're going to feel guilty, and well, maybe it's, but I got into that because there was so many people that were going about things the wrong way to help themselves, and
what way? What's the wrong way? I'm just curious. What do you think most people are doing so that we can recognize it when we see it?
By actually not commenting at all and just getting up and doing what the person wants. That's very passive behavior. You're not going to stand up for yourself. You don't voice your needs or your concerns to the other individual. You'd rather just sit there and let it all happen. But inside, you're very uncomfortable with what's going on.
Right.
You don't like it and you want change, but you can't actually find the courage or the strength to stand up and say, this is what I need.
Right.
And there's a cute little exercise I use with clients. Sometimes, and a few of the younger women I've had are having, because of the life they've had, and then they're into these business realm where they have their own businesses and things. There's always something that gives, and it's usually the relationship at home. In a lot of cases that gives. So there's been a lot of issues with strained relationships. So I'll just give them the exercise of saying, okay, get a stopwatch. And it's going to be, you're going to sit across from each other. You can't reach each other because, we don't want any of that stuff going on. So I'm going to go first. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to time myself and I'm going to speak for 5 minutes about my needs, how I feel when this happens, not when you do something, you're wrong and you're this and you're that. It's, okay, Celia, when I feel very under strain when the garbage isn't taken out in time. I'm not 100% sure I can do it myself, but I would really appreciate it if you would remember, or I can help you remember, to take the garbage out for us. So that the heated discussion won't happen. So the other individual has to sit there quietly, not roll their eyes, not make faces, not make rude hand gestures or anything like that, and just sit and actively listen to what the other individual is saying. So right then and there, you're setting your boundaries of what you will and will not accept in this relationship.
And then what happens when the other person still doesn't take out the garbage?
Well, you have to keep practicing that one, I think. I think if it's still a source of contention in the home, you need to have that discussion. Well, maybe the other individual hasn't got time to take out the garbage when you want them to. So maybe that's something I could take on.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe they just need to plan their day out better. And I need to learn to not get so frustrated when it's not done.
Right. I had someone tell me, the friend of mine had, I think her husband kept leaving his clothes at the bottom of the stairs, or, they just leave them wherever, right? I mean, that's kind of a common thing. But she got so frustrated. Every time she'd see an article of clothing lying around anywhere, she would pick it up and put it in the garage.
That's a good one.
And soon his entire wardrobe was in the garage.
Oh,
But,
not good.
that taught him a lesson that if he wants his clothes in the closet or in the hamper or whatever, to pick it up.
Well, it's not that hard. And I've done that actually with my children when they were young,
Yeah.
very young. I had 2 boys and they didn't want to have to pick up their toys. And I don't know if anybody can relate to stepping on Lego in the middle of the night with bare feet. That hurts. So I was fed up with my boys. I had asked them for a long time, you need to pick up your toys. I've explained, I showed them how to do it. We've done it together. It's your responsibility now. And they kept refusing. And I kept saying to them, okay, one of these days, Mama's going to put everything in a bag and put it out to the curb. Well, they didn't believe me. My kids now call me a hard, yeah. But I did one day pick up all of their toys and put it in a garbage bag, and I'm dragging it to the curb of the house, and they're screaming and kicking. The neighbors thought I was beating them. It was funny. But they learned after that point in time, there are restrictions on their actions.
Right.
You need to do your share and you need to help out. And this is your responsibility.
Right.
They learned.
How old are they now? How old are your boys?
38 and 34. And then I have 2 stepsons that are 33 and 30. So,
okay. So here's a question. Do you think that females are harder to set boundaries than males are? Do you think, when you're talking about little girls, little boys, do you think little girls have a harder time setting boundaries?
I think so. I think that's that. Oh, and I don't want to be quoted on this, but I think it's our nurturing backgrounds.
Right.
For a lot of us, we're raised without those boundaries because we're females. Men can just sit back and say, well, that's it. I'm done. Yeah.
Right.
And I think for us, we want to make everything right. We want to help everyone. We want things so in our homes and, and we just, I think we put that added pressure on ourselves for whatever reason.
Right. And then, the little girls grow up to be, like you said, in your first marriage, you said you didn't set boundaries. Tell us a little bit about that and how you overcame and was able to set boundaries or not. I don't know. Tell me the story.
I set one really big boundary. No, we were married in 1981 and it was my first marriage, his second. You think I would have known there was an alarm bell there, but I didn't. But, it started the day we got married where his father in front of me said, well, you've married her now. It's time to take her name out of everything and don't give her any money. And I kept quiet. Normally, I would have spoke up. I would have just told him where to go, and probably not in a good way. But so that type of thing just continued on. There was violence in the home. So when you're manipulated and controlled and abused, you're not able really to set a lot of boundaries. So my childhood came flooding back and I just gave up after a while. So sounds terrible, but I was with that person for 25 years. And I had no boundaries for a very long time. I couldn't walk across a restaurant because I was in fear. I was always living in fear. Someone might see me, someone might hear me, someone might not like the way I'm walking or talking, or I'm eating wrong. It was always something. But I noticed at one point in time that I was actually dying inside. There was nothing left that was happy inside. And I don't know what it was or how it happened, but suddenly I found my internal strength again that I had at one point in time. And I just said, I'm out of here. And at that point in time, we were on a big farm. We had to clean up the farm. finish up the house that we built. And my grandmother was living with us at the same time, but she went into a retirement home. She died at that time, like during that time. And it was the most stressful, difficult, horrendous time I have ever lived through in my life. But my strength was there. And that's what we need to draw on when we come into these things. So my way of setting my boundaries with him was saying, you're done. That's a very rigid that's a description of a very rigid background or boundary. It's a brick wall. You're not allowed in anymore. That's it.
What do you think snapped, made you just wake up and say, that's it, I've had enough? Because, that is a story that we hear all too often, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a woman or a man or, any relationship that, if there's domestic violence involved or something like that. What makes someone just turn the corner and say enough is enough? And how do we tap into that? And how do you help others tap into that?
Well, for myself, it was, I woke up and realized that the only person in this world I could truly depend on was myself. Mm-hmm. And I was the only one that could make the change. Our oldest son had gone off to university 1 year, and he went quite a ways away, like 15, 18 hours away from home. Never been away from home before, but that was kind of, and I'm sitting there. We didn't have my former husband and I didn't have a great relationship anyway. He didn't talk to me much and, was kind of isolated and all that sort of thing. So I was sitting there one day when my older son was gone, and I'm looking at him across the room as he's reading and ignoring me or watching TV and ignoring me. And I'm like, I don't even like you. Why am I still here? We have absolutely nothing in common other than our two sons. Why was I here? Like, this was the dumbest thing I ever did. However, I have two beautiful sons out of it. But it was just that, I think that was the beginning of the awareness that there was nothing left for me there. Yeah. And the only way I was going to get out was by setting some rules. So I took some education. I went and got a job. It was a horrible job at the time, but I took it to get some money because he was hiding all the money on me as well. It's a whole control situation. But what he was not expecting was when my grandmother passed away, she left me some money. So I got out. It was the only way I got out completely. Right. And, the interesting part of this is he and I have spoken on the phone a few times. Our oldest son is married and we've got a granddaughter together. And so we are at events together, and my husband and I go, he and his wife go, and we actually get along better than you could ever imagine. So it was a journey. It was a process to wake up, to know that I needed something better. Right.
So you like working with women, or do you do women and men, or who's your preferred client?
Well, most of my clients have been women, and they range, like I say, from 30 up to, I think I had one that was 55. Usually they're professional women, but not always. If there's something stuck in your past that you need to get out, or you're not finding your own value anymore, there's a great exercise that I use that, you go in and you find your 3 power words that describe you, and that becomes your mantra. And then you eventually convince yourself that, yes, that is who I am. Oh my, I am amazing. I'm strong. I'm resilient, and I'm confident. Something along that line. I also do work with men. So yes, I do have worked with several men clients, and it's different, I will admit. When you break it down, the problems are still the same. Right. Not being accepted, not feeling you're good enough, under huge amounts of stress because of a work situation or a family situation. So I will work with male or female, doesn't matter.
Right.
Whoever needs help.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were just talking before I pressed the record button about some programs that you have coming out, like, workshops. Um, do you want to give us a sneak peek into like what that entails? Maybe, from start to beginning, or from start to end, on what are some of the things you handle in your programs?
Sure. I've actually just developed a program on healthy boundaries.
Oh, terrific. Well,
Yeah,
there you
absolutely.
go.
Perfect timing, wasn't it? So what we would actually do is sit down and I would listen. We have a conversation first to find out where the client is, what boundaries they do have, if they have any, are they effective boundaries? Are they ineffective? And then we just go through the definitions of what a boundary is. It's just, your guidelines, your set of rules of what you will and will not accept in your life, and who you will not accept into your life. And, there are, we go through and we define what some good boundaries are and what ineffective boundaries are. So bad boundaries. So good boundaries are, they help you to identify who you are. They help you to understand your value system. Bad boundaries or ineffective boundaries can lead to a loss of self-respect, a loss of interest in life, which, if everybody's just, it's a revolving door boundary system, there are no boundaries and everybody's just going to come in and walk all over you. And that leaves you just, emotionless almost. And that's so unhealthy and not good for us to live in, truly. Right. So after that, we would discuss the different types of boundaries. So there's emotional, there's physical, there's sexual, spiritual, there's legal, there's mental, there's relational. So a good example I could give you right now of a physical boundary is you and I, we're best friends, and I have a purse that has all my really important stuff in, and I have my lipsticks in there too. One of them is your favorite color that you like to borrow once in a while, but you don't always ask me for permission to borrow that lipstick or to go into my purse. So the physical boundary is that I own the purse. The violation of that boundary is when, Celia, you just decide, I want that lipstick, I'm going, and you sort through my purse until you find it. So you're violating my boundary totally.
I'm not taking out the trash. I'm stealing your lipstick. I'm not a very good friend.
Apparently not, but I'll keep you anyway. No. So the enforcement of that boundary would be for me to say to you, Celia, I really am uncomfortable with you just rummaging through my purse to get my lipstick whenever you feel like it. In the future, I'd appreciate it if you would ask me permission first. I'll either get it for you or I will give you permission to go in my purse. So that's an example of setting an easy physical boundary. Does that make sense?
So you have you said relational, legal. Can you go through each one and give me an example of each?
Each one. Oh my goodness. Well, sexual boundary, we know that, if you say no and whoever you're with decides, I didn't hear that word, that's an invasion of your sexual boundary. Yeah. It has to be your decision, your choice, right? Spiritual, that could be your value system or whatever God you believe in. Someone comes in and says, no, that's not right. But you have to set your own boundaries. So your spiritual one would be, let me see. Yes, you lose your core values, or you start to unbelieve, or if that's a word, start to, it's chipping away at your values and you don't feel that they're as strong as they were before. So relational, that's where you have a family member that is always, interfering in your boundaries, or doesn't understand you have any boundaries, isn't always taking advantage of you, or they are the strongest one of the family, therefore they have all the rights to everything within the family. Well, no, it should be an equal thing, correct? Emotional, I think that's when we have, how would you describe that one? That one, I'm not 100% sure how I could come up with a good example of that one.
Emotional boundaries.
I would think that that would be more of, so when you're in a happy mood, and I'm just going to use emotion. So
Right.
when you're in a happy mood and that other individual doesn't like it when you're always happy, and they try to get in and say, what are you so happy about? You need to stop doing this. That's ridiculous behavior, all that sort of thing. So I'm assuming that's what it is, but that would be my definition of it.
Right.
Okay. Mental boundaries, that's very much like your comfort zone.
Right.
So we need to be challenged to get out of our comfort zone. And that's the only point in time we'll actually grow.
Right.
But if we're staying in an unhealthy comfort zone, that's allowing fear and a doubt to creep in and stop us from doing what we need to be doing to move on and to grow.
Right.
And legal, if you have, for example, an elder parent that you're caring for, and you are power of attorney for them, there are rules and regulations that you're supposed to follow when you're power of attorney for an individual. Right. And if you overstep those bounds, don't even do what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Not following that boundary very well, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And I've been in the power of attorney situation. I've had to do it before for my grandmother.
Right.
So I understand the challenges that go in and out of that. That's unbelievable. So that's the types of boundaries. Right. So if you were to think, and I have a little idea of a diagram, you will picture a circle that has 4 rings to it.
Okay.
Okay. So like cutting a ball in half, and you've got the rings, right? So the outer ring is your public space. That's your public boundaries, which are totally different than all the rest. So the third one in is your social space. That's where your friends and all that extended family members are. Right. The second one is your personal space. So that's when you're at home or you're out doing shopping on your own. That's your personal space, how you like to be, how you like to have things for yourself. And then the very core of that is like the core of yourself. That's your intimate space. That you don't skimp on, as far as I'm concerned. Because that just, that ends up like I was, and that was not a very good way to live. That was, as far as I was concerned, that was just existing, and I wanted so much more for myself.
Right, right. So the why, the how, the value.
The value is, if you set really good, healthy boundaries, you grow in so many ways. You have like a blank canvas that you can go and draw your own future on. The sky's the limit, but you have to take little action steps every time to keep growing outside of your comfort zone. So for me, writing a webinar was very challenging and very out of my comfort zone. So I hired a really good coach to help me, and she is just amazing. Carolyn, can I get... And, for me, it was just totally something that I was uncomfortable with. But I could have lived in fear and doubt and not set my boundaries and not keep my boundaries healthy by just saying, well, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. Oh, well, end of that story. Yeah. But no, I accepted the challenge. And I moved on, and I've learned how to do it. And Carolyn is an exceptional coach to teach you that. Right. So I'm challenging myself. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but I can see the end coming now, and it's fantastic.
That is so terrific. Again, a testament to, doesn't matter if you are already a coach, coaches need coaches, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because they could see things that we can't, right?
Well, and absolutely. I mean, like I say, my background was in human resources, and then I got into the psychology and whatnot. So marketing wasn't good for me. All that building stuff, and I'm learning, but it wasn't my comfort spot.
Right.
So in order to get better at it, I need to take control of it
Right.
and go for it. We
Right.
all do.
Right.
We really need to all go for what we want.
Exactly. And that, okay, so here's a question with boundaries and purpose. Do you think that if someone is really attuned with what their purpose is, what their mission is, that it's easier for them to set boundaries saying, don't cross this because I've got a mission and you are stepping over my boundaries, get out of my way.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't quite put it that way, but yeah. Get out of my way. No, let's do it with comfort, compassion, and kindness, right? But yeah. I mean, part of setting boundaries is having a great goal system in place.
Right.
You need to have that, your future planned out, and don't be caught off guard if it doesn't go the way you want. Maybe it's not supposed to be that way,
right,
but it's maybe meant to be in this other direction, which I've come across a couple different times.
Right.
And you get veered off in a different direction, but it's actually helpful.
Yeah.
So we're learning, we're growing, but not allowing other people to influence our decisions. You can listen to what they say, you can hear what they say, and it's up to you to decide, okay, thanks, I appreciate that insight. I'll do what I want with that information, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think people who cross boundaries are people that we might give a little more power to, or put on a pedestal, or fear an outcome if we say no?
People that want in our boundaries?
That people that we allow to cross the boundaries.
Oh, well,
and we allow them to permeate through the boundaries. Are there people that we put up on pedestals, or not so much in a good way all the time, but people we give too much power to that they don't deserve, but somehow they've got the power? Because I can't see us letting people walk all over us if we don't really care that much about what they think, right?
Yeah. You could be in a work situation where your boss ultimately does have control over what you do
Right.
and how you do it.
Right.
That's a boundary that sometimes you can't help, but how you react to their way of doing things and how you show them. See, it's up to us to teach them, the other individual, what our boundaries are, what we will accept and what we won't accept,
Right.
to the best of our ability.
Right.
The boss situation, maybe you don't have a lot of control over, but a family member or friend, yeah, you can have total control over that. And in a lot of cases, people that step into your boundaries also are individuals who have unhealthy boundaries themselves.
Right.
Or don't know how to have them.
Right. So do you work with the other side, people who step into boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a few like that. Actually, I have sons like that, but no, I do actually, because it's important that we address both sides of the coin, both sides of the issue. I mean, one of my clients, I ended up talking with her husband to try to get him to understand the work I was trying to do to help both of them, not just her. It needed to come from both of them. So when we just had a conversation about, participating in the 5-minute, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to listen thing.
Right.
Because after the one person has their chance to talk for 5 minutes, then you have to be quiet, and it turns around. The other person has the right for 5 minutes to talk.
Yeah.
And you must listen.
Yeah.
And you must be quiet.
Right.
And respect.
So I'm trying to figure out what's the foundation, or what's the psychology behind someone who just goes and steps over someone else's boundary? Like, what's the common thing what energy are they putting out in your opinion?
Well, I think it would be negative energy. Totally. It would be almost I hate to say the term, bullying proposition, because they just want, there's a touch of selfishness in there, I think, because they want you to do something. They want you to do it their way. Their way is the right way. And that reminds me of a saying that my former father-in-law used to say is, do as I say, not as I do. So, like, oh, some of the things, and people in situations like that don't always realize that they are stepping all over your boundaries because you've allowed it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to stand up and learn to set our own boundaries. It's good for us. It's good for everyone. And, we need to, as adults, we need to do that for ourselves and teach our children how to do it too.
Right.
So,
and I think that's the whole lesson about boundaries is if you empower yourself in all areas of your life, not just, relationship or whatever, the boundaries will become clearer and clearer when we're closer to understanding what our mission on this planet is, what's our mission in life. And once we know that, again, I'm not saying get out of my way, but if we are really clear with what we want, then it kind of is. No one can stand between us and our goal if we know exactly where we want to go.
Exactly.
Right?
And that personal energy that goes along with that goal, it's positive energy, it's excitement. Why would you let someone else take that away from you?
Yeah.
Don't let it happen.
So that's the goal, really, is to help clients, I think, find out exactly what they want and what their goal is.
Yes.
And once they do that, it's amazing. Once they're inspired with their goals, they don't let people come and tell them what they can or cannot do, right?
Exactly. And that what you can do when you teach yourself how to do that is you teach the other individual at the same time.
Absolutely. And then the bully can see that. And then, it's like a force field that just pushes and say, okay, this is it. And then they become equals. Or, you've just, okay, I don't care anymore. Let's go to the next thing, right?
Exactly. I mean, if the relationship doesn't change and it stays that way, then you have the choice to make. Do you really need this person in your life?
Yeah.
What value do they add? Do you add value to their life? If not, well, if they do, fantastic. But make your choices and make healthy choices.
Yeah. Wow, what a great conversation. Teresa, it's never a dull moment when I get you on.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Post-COVID, when we're in that same room, we'll just be sitting at our table with our glass of wine or something, talking about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I look forward to that day. Absolutely.
Same. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wisdom and for helping others out there. We really appreciate it.